Today, we're doing a little more of the recent events, news of note. We talk about a little COVID stuff, a little war stuff with Ukraine and Israel. We talk about a couple other things and of recent events, and I think you'll enjoy the show.
Yep, sounds good, guys. Hope you enjoy it.
Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to Mishmash Men. I am your host today. I'll be leading the discussion, and I am Adam Mauser, and my co-host, partner in crime, is to my right.
Dustin Labar. Hello.
So I hope you enjoyed last week's episode.
And you had a Merry Christmas.
Yes. So today is the day after Christmas, and I know Dusty and I look a lot like we did last week, but we
like these clothes. I
really love this pullover.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. But hope you did have a great Christmas and you're getting excited about New Year's.
Oh, yeah. New Year's coming up, too.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. That's usually what happens.
Maybe we should have some New Year's resolutions that we post somewhere.
Okay.
Man, I could have done a whole episode on that.
On New Year's resolutions?
Yeah. Maybe we'll do it for the week after.
I love it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
We'll come for just the podcast, though. Just me and you.
Yeah.
I like it. Let's do it.
Yeah. And Dusty and I have been talking about a couple of guests, one or two guests that we might have in the next few months, hopefully sooner than that, that we just to expose you to different folks of different walks of life and see how things are going.
Yep.
So this week it's more like I did the last time I did the podcast, and that was news of note or recent happenings. I think the way Abby the intern coined it. So one of the biggest topics of late has been President Zelensky of Ukraine coming over and getting more money.
Yeah.
That was a couple weeks ago when he came over asking for more millions of dollars.
Yeah, he asked for more millions, and they said no, and then he asked for credit.
Right.
Which is worse.
It is much worse.
I mean, it's not very good.
Well, the question is, the way we do our monetary policy is such that it's essentially credit anyway. It's not really just fake.
They're not just giving him, like, cash.
Right.
Like, they're not just like, here's a bag of cash. I think we might have talked about this. So if I said this already, I apologize. But I think that his troops were like being like, hey, we don't want to do this anymore. And he was like, we don't care how many are going to die.
Right.
We need to get them out there and fight. And they were like, but do we need to do that? I did hear somebody say recently that the world, how do I want to say this? It's not like a negative. I guess it's a negative, depends on how you look at it. Like, they're talking about a treaty ultimately.
Right.
But they're saying the world is going to have to be okay with the fact that Russia is going to seize some territory.
Right.
Is basically what the guy was saying.
Yeah, so. And Putin actually spoke on that recently, where he's ready to start talking peace soon.
Yeah. I think he's done enough where he thinks he's going to get some of the territory back.
Yeah.
And he's done what he wanted to do in terms of pushing NATO, like getting Ukraine, like not letting Ukraine become a partner or a NATO partner.
Yeah.
I think that was, obviously part of the equation as well.
Right. The interesting part is that part of Ukraine that he is been focusing on is it's a part of Ukraine that speaks Russian. They identify as Russian.
Yeah, it's mostly Russian people.
Yeah, it's Russian people.
For all intents and purposes.
Right.
Intents and purposes.
Intents and purposes.
Yes. Okay.
And then that's the interesting part. But he's also hit other areas that include where the U.S. was funding biomedical research, which at first was denied by the State Department and called crazy conspiracy theories. And then it turns out, this tacit admission, usually on a Friday night, they dump the news and they admit it. And that's exactly what happened there.
Yep. I don't know why this popped in my head. Did you see where Candace Owens... it was probably maybe a year ago now at this point, where she blew up the New York Times, where she had said something about that people but Ukraine had like they were corrupt and had some, they were like Nazis are probably in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And the New York Times was like, how dare you? Where are you getting your research? And she tweeted back several of their articles in the past several years where they were like, Ukraine is corrupt and full of Nazis, and they were like, so you may want to fact check yourselves before you come after me. I just thought that was funny because that really was that was like a real thing. Like everybody was like, yeah, the Nazi thing aside, everybody was like, Ukraine is very corrupt.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't really put money there. I think we talked about that one time. Like
we did a couple weeks ago, as a matter of fact. They were, the corporate media was rightly pointing out at the time that they are corrupted by Nazism. That's where a lot of the German Nazis escaped to after post-World War II into that area of Ukraine. And a lot of their elite forces, a lot of their traditional forces that are fighting against Putin's Russia, they have Nazi symbology all over their uniforms, all over their vehicles, their military equipment. So, you can try to close your eyes to it, but and that goes back, those accusations that the New York people like the New York Times were making was when we were demanding regime change in Ukraine to install our is in the World Economic Forum and the U.S. Installed our guy. And so we basically sponsored a coup to get that guy in charge. So it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So Ukraine, that's still just kind of festering along. There could be some peace talks in a few months. Who knows?
It's definitely lost its steam in America.
Oh yeah, no more. Very few Ukraine flags on Facebook.
People are slowly losing their interest in it. Which I think Putin called. He was like, "You guys are going to lose interest in this." And we were like, "Nuh-uh," and they were like, "Yeah, we're pretty tired of it." There's also something else going on over there, so we're totally focused on something else now.
Here's another shiny penny.
Yeah, that's right.
And one more thing on Ukraine. You recall, how long ago was that? Within the past 2 months, let's say, there was a leakage of a top secret document that listed the true casualties from Ukraine and Russia.
Boy, I haven't heard about this.
And so it was like, the estimates at the time anyway were like, oh, Ukraine's lost 75,000 troops, and those Russians, they're like 175,000, whatever the numbers were, but it was proportionally about the same. Well, it turns out, according to this top secret documentation, that some Air Force guardsmen got busted for leaking it and putting it out there. The numbers were north of 200,000 for Ukraine losses, and the Russians were much, much smaller than what they were saying. So who knows what the truth is? The truth eventually will come out. But
I listened to a guy, I forget his name now. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast. Laura hates when I say that, but he was. It seems like a smart guy. I can't remember his name. Zehan, Peter Zehan.
Oh yeah,
With him. He said, and he turned it out, I've heard multiple people say it after him, but he was like, in the history, Russia just wins by people. Like it just has more people than you. So it can throw all these people out there and you just can't handle it.
Right.
So it's too many, which is pretty much the real. I mean, even, it's probably proportionately like terrible in Ukraine's favor, obviously, but they could just keep this going, and Ukraine can't keep it up. They don't have enough bodies, and they don't have enough people and fighting age men. And
right. Well, Russia also has, their military equipment at large. This is a generalization, but especially during the USSR days, Russian Federation, their equipment was cheap, easy to produce. Any one of their satellite nations could produce it. And but they would just overwhelm you with numbers. Like their fighters weren't the most elaborate, but they are good at several things. The Russians, just by their nature, just the population, and they're good at software. Really good at software because they're math people.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And so, math and software rather is just logic applied to a certain language.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And so they're very good at it. And so they're good at things that involve software, which is most things these days. And so anyway, that's that involves like radar, very sophisticated systems, and anti-aircraft type weaponry. And so all those types of sensors that you develop, use software to mechanize them.
Yeah.
So interesting. So we've got Ukraine, and Israel just has kind of fizzled.
They've really. You said Ukraine and Israel?
No, just Israel. This war in Israel. That's just kind of like we're all waiting for something to happen, either like some kind of deal, or is it going to erupt in some kind of huge battle?
Yeah.
and fighting war, and it just continues to kind of fester. And I haven't seen a whole lot on it. I haven't actively looked, but just the unseen hand that I'm talking about now is there's not a whole lot of news coming out of that Israel other than the protests that we see in the U.S.
Yeah.
Where on college campuses, a lot of pro-Palestinian protests are happening, which is just interesting.
The most I've heard about it, so I said weeks ago.
Yeah, had to been weeks.
I said to you, I think there's a ceasefire. And you said, I think that's over. And I was like, I just heard about that. I can't believe that's true. And then, I mean, we left the podcast, and the first thing when I opened my phone up was like, they were already shooting at each other. And I was like, Adam was spot on. I was wrong. So they broke that. There was some humanitarian aid in and stuff like that. But I guess a lot of people have been pushing for peace. And I guess like Israel's like destroying them. It's not like it's close.
Right.
Like I think that they're overwhelming them. So I don't exactly know, what's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't either. I think they're going to contain that mess that's in the Gaza Strip, which is basically an open-air prison.
Yeah.
That's really what it is.
Yeah, they'll just occupy.
Going in there to occupy would be difficult because you got to take every square inch. That's the trouble with an invasion. You have to subdue the enemy, and when they're so decentralized,
I gotcha.
It's hard to do unless they're already restricted in what they can do to defend themselves, like weapons. That's one of the reasons why we were not an ideal candidate for invasion during World War II, or in any time, is because we are armed. We're armed we have more weapons as individuals, as citizens, than the whole world. And so you'd have to. I think Hitler said there'd be a gunman behind every blade of grass. And he's right.
It would be difficult to invade us. For a lot of reasons, that being a huge part of it.
Right.
That you roll up to a farm in Alabama and you're like, this guy's got stuff.
Yeah.
We're in trouble. The protests are interesting. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to there's certain people listen to this. I don't want to say anything that's there's people protesting for Palestine, which is the people that are protesting and the signs that they're writing are almost funny.
They are funny.
Well, because you're like, you don't even know. You clearly have no idea what's going on over there. And when something like this happens, you look to stand-up comedians because they have always the best take on stuff.
Right.
Because they can deliver it in a less than, it's an easy way to take the information because they're making a joke out of it. But some of the guys that are listening to you should go over there.
Right.
And see how it goes. See what they think of you.
Yeah.
And they probably don't care that you're cheering for them.
Right.
And
they might kill you.
They probably will kill you.
Yeah.
And so and that's the reality. Well, part of it is, I think it's not part of it. It's probably complete uneducation of what's actually going on. You're just
100%.
You're just grabbing an idea and thinking that you're going to get the most social credit for saying it, so you say it, but you really don't have any idea what those people are going through on either side. You don't have really any idea. So it's a wild thing that college campuses are. I'm glad they're posting that stuff on the news, really.
Yeah.
I think it's better for us. I'm speaking to sane people that they post that stuff because you can see how wild it is.
Right. And so, just over the top.
Yeah, because I think it's going to enact some kind of change eventually in higher learning institutions because right now it's just wild.
They seem to be just producers of concentrated propaganda.
Yeah. That's why I like listening to, what's the guy's name? Weinstein?
Brett Weinstein?
That got in trouble.
Yeah.
Because he was like, I'm coming to work. I'm coming to work.
Yeah. They
were like, you can't. He was like, well, I'm going to show up anyway.
Yeah.
You can't stop me. And they were like, and they raked him over the coals, but you can tell he's very intelligent, not any kind of bigot.
Right.
Just a normal.
Just a critical thinker.
Just a critical thinker. But you need people like that.
Yeah.
To kind of, because when you listen to him, you're like, oh, yeah, why can't you go to work?
Right.
You can go to work. But I think more people like that and more I think they're showing it for a reason. But I think the reason that they're showing it is not working in their favor. Because people that are actually know what's going on, they're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would those people hold signs like that? They know that that's not the way things work in the Middle East. You know what I mean?
I think it's just that we are all subject to a barrage of propaganda.
Yeah.
And it's clear that these different factions, including people like you and me.
Yeah.
We take our opinions based off of the propaganda that we've held.
Yeah.
And it fits in our narrative, and we want it to be true. So then we support that cause, even though it might be counter if we were to think of it critically.
Yeah.
But that group over there, we don't like that group over there because
maybe they cough too much.
Or they have chosen positions that I find antithetical to family integrity.
Yeah.
And so I don't like that group already, and now they are pro-X, Israel-Palestine, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so then and if they're rabid, then it's easy for us to just hate on them. And then likewise, we're saying the same things.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, you don't understand, and it just becomes this thing. It's almost as if we are being manipulated.
Yeah.
Purposely for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think we are. What that reason is, I'm not going to share. I have my opinions, and I'm going to keep them to myself for now anyway. Mm-hmm. But I think it's for a reason, and I think it's to distract.
Yeah.
There's a deeper set of reasons that engulf a larger effort.
Mm-hmm.
But for now, I'll just say it's to distract us from what we should be paying attention to.
Mm-hmm. I gotcha.
So at any rate, so Israel, that continues to just fester.
Yeah.
It's on low simmer right now. There are a lot of issues with hostages getting released and that sort of thing, and it's heartbreaking.
They did do some trading of hostages and some stuff like that, but it looks like
it's not fast enough.
Yeah, it's not fast enough.
No. It's a mess.
Yeah.
But it's the leverage that the Palestinians think they have.
Yeah.
So they're going to apply that leverage. So,
yeah.
So a quick change of topic. Do you recall that Chiefs fan, little kid?
Can you, it was a young kid, right? And he had his face painted black and red, correct?
Correct.
And he was at a Chiefs game.
Right.
Where, I don't know, 60,000 people are also, maybe not 60,000, but
it's like that stadium holds like 80,000.
But I mean, there's probably like maybe 10,000 people that have their face painted.
Oh yeah,
they're all doing the chop.
Yeah.
As they're going on the field. But this young kid, he was young, right?
Yeah, he's like 8, 9,
was
10.
He labeled as like a racist or something?
He was labeled as a racist, and what happened was this reporter, and I don't remember the reporter's name. It's really immaterial. The photo that was presented that he was basing his story off of was a profile view. And if when you look at his face from the front, it's like half, this half's black and this half's red.
Right.
In the profile view, all you see is the black, and you see he was wearing a full Indian headdress, like what Indian chief would wear.
Yeah.
The Chiefs.
Yeah.
And said that, racism, it's never going to go away in America, blah, blah, blah. And can you believe this little kid? And going on and on. Well, it turns out a couple things. One, his face was red and black.
Yeah.
He was there to cheer on his team.
Yep.
He's not a racist.
He's not an 8-year-old racist. Yeah.
No. In fact, he is actually his dad, and I think he, by default, is a member of some Indian tribe from that area. So the kid's literally an Indian.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what's racist about a kid with Indian blood in him?
Yeah.
Indian, cheering for his team, wearing face paint to look like his favorite team.
Yep.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's not a thing wrong with it.
Yeah.
That guy must have had nothing going on in his news that week, and he saw that and he was like, I mean, it's a kid.
It's that confirmation bias. Like, hey, this fits what I want to believe about America, and so there I'm going to write a whole story on it.
I think you could have sent me a picture of that kid, but come up with the most nonsense news story about this kid that you can possibly think of. Like the most nonsense thing. I don't even know if I would have come up with that if I was like, let me think about it for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's a kid. First off, it's a kid. Now, of course, there's people that raise their kids a certain way, and they may have, they may do something racist, just, what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. But, I mean, if you showed a little bit of background that he's at a football game.
Right.
If you showed even the tiniest instinct or tiniest little bit of information that he's at a football game, you're going to be like, oh, he's.
Looks like he's cheering on.
I mean,
his
if you
team.
watch the Titans, there's a bunch of guys with blue and silver paint on their face.
Right.
I'm like, how dare they?
Yeah. You hate the Tin Man.
Yeah, yeah. What are you racist against robots? Is that robot face? Like it's just not. I mean, that guy is. He could have. I mean, I'll be honest with you. He could have had his whole face painted black. If he's at a football game, I still would have been like, he's a Chiefs fan.
Right.
He's just painted his face.
Right.
So that guy is. That's what I think is starving for something to like get people to click on your article is what I think it is.
That and that whole confirmation bias business where this fits the narrative that I want to broadcast.
Yeah.
So, now I'm going to write about it rather than doing, the easiest investigation ever. Like, well, let me see if there's any other pictures of him.
Yeah.
And then also assuming that it's a race thing when he's actually an Indian.
Does the term investigative journalist is that even a thing anymore?
There are some investigative journalists out there doing some good work, like James O'Keefe. You know him, right?
Mm-mm.
So James O'Keefe, he got his start years and years ago, maybe about 20 years ago. He was still in college. And him and his girl, Hannah Giles, he dressed as a pimp, like an outlandish outfit. And Hannah Giles, the girl, she dressed as if she were a prostitute.
Uh-huh.
And they literally went into Acorn offices and told outlandish tales and you remember Acorn?
The app?
No.
Oh, okay.
So Acorn was a group. They were I can't remember. This is got me stymied now. But bottom line is they were a corrupt organization, and they were a big proponent of Obama. Obama was getting a lot of money from Acorn. He was making sure they were getting some kind of federal dollars.
Gotcha.
And they were corrupt. And so he would literally say stuff like, she's a prostitute, but I'm going to take some of this money and give it to Acorn. And and they were all about it. And they didn't care that he's got this woman as a prostitute.
Yeah.
And he's the independent contractor.
Yeah. They just take the money.
They just took the money and support, like, oh, yeah, you're going to support us. And if you were to look at him, he's just like this scrawny white kid dressed as a pimp like you would see in a black exploitation movie.
Yeah.
It was just a ridiculous outfit.
Yeah.
He also, when he was going to college later on, he is of Irish descent, James O'Keefe. And he went to the college and university, and they served Lucky Charms cereal. And he was making to their diversity group, make it a claim that they need to remove Lucky Charms cereal because it's offensive to him as an Irishman.
That's awesome.
And he puts them in these corners where, it's that whole cognitive dissonance where they think this thing about this group over here, but now I'm going to apply that same kind of logic to this group over here. And they don't compute.
Yeah,
they're like, well, you can't be racist against Irish.
Yeah. You're like, what are you talking about?
Have you seen history? I mean, the Irish were slaves just like Africans were slaves in the United States. So
I know that everybody likes his style, but that kind of reminded me of like the way Matt Walsh does it, like the way he argues. And obviously he is, to be fair, like he is very good at the way he holds a conversation, knowing that it's going to be argumentative, and can remain overly calm where other people would not be able to remain calm.
Right.
So that tips in his favor, because as he remains even more calm, that makes the other person get even more infuriated, no matter what. But the way that he's able to I think the biggest sign of like a victory in that thing is when you say something to somebody and they it's almost like you reset their brain. And they have to reboot the system before they even respond. They're like,
I just can't argue with you.
You're
a jerk.
Yeah, I can't even say anything to you. And you're like, well, I mean, if you think you have a good point, you should argue it.
Right.
But just calling him an idiot is not the way you're not going to win that argument with him doing that.
No.
You're going to have something better.
Well, because they're inconsistent.
That's right.
Yeah, they're inconsistent. And he just points out those inconsistencies.
But he's obviously Laura will say looking for a fight, essentially looking for a fight. He knows that he's going to go and it's going to have these really tough conversations.
Oh yeah.
So it's not a surprise, but it's not a surprise to them either.
No.
They know that a quick Google search, if he asked you for a interview and you didn't Google search him, that's your fault.
Yeah, it is your
fault. If
fault.
you have no idea who's coming in and he blindsides you, first off, you should probably, if somebody's coming to have an on-camera talk with you, I would at least be like, who is Matt Walsh? And they'd be a part of the Daily Wire, blah, blah, blah. You might be like,
YouTube videos galore.
I see what's going to happen here. I might be prepared. So that probably didn't happen. They probably Google searched him. What I think happens is these people are so sure they're going to outdo him that they're almost overly confident.
100%.
That they're I'm going to be able to get this guy.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the guy that ruins his movie.
Yeah.
And you're just not going to be.
Because I'm going to call him ugly or whatever it is.
Well, they think they're going to out talk him, and you're like, he was basically born for this. The way he talks and the way he thinks, you're not gonna remain as calm as him. You're not gonna have these points that he's gonna have.
Right.
And then the more fired up you get, the better it is. But that's part of like, in the movie, the parts that are silent are probably the most telling parts, where he gets somebody to be silent.
Yeah.
Through his way of like using something like, hey, these are racist against Irish people.
Right.
People being like, what are you talking about? Don't be so sensitive.
Yeah.
They're good. They've got heart stars and horseshoes.
Did you? I was going to do an impression, but I'll hold off.
I'm glad you didn't. I wasn't sure what it was going to be, but
yeah, there was a recent thing that James O'Keefe did. So a lot of folks sent him information, including video, and so there were whistleblowers from IBM and Red Hat. Red Hat's a subsidiary of IBM, software companies, and so James O'Keefe got a hold of this, and he did a story on it.
Mm-hmm.
And what it was the president of IBM. I assume he was the president. He was in charge of IBM, so either the CEO or chairman of the board or whatever, or the president. And he's telling his senior staff, we're not going to hire white people. We are going to only hire, and we're not going to hire, I think, Asians also. But anyway, white people bad. Mm. We need to hire more black people, more, name your race or creed, right?
Gotcha.
And if they're from this kind of part, then we're not interested. You need to get your numbers up, basically, in hiring, which is literally illegal.
Yeah,
you can't do that. So he has them on video. He's published it, posted it, and this is within the past, I'm going to say 2 weeks now, maybe 3, where he's and then of course the guy's responding, and he's got no leg to stand on because what he's doing is illegal.
Yeah,
is 100% illegal.
Yeah.
And the guy from Red Hat, works for him, but he's in charge of all Red Hat software, was echoing the same sentiments. So it's just, there are more and more of these whistleblowers coming out because he's enabling that. That's what James O'Keefe is doing, investigative journalist, but he's also exploiting the folks that are tired of being trampled on.
Yeah.
That work in these companies to be whistleblowers and send him information,
gotcha.
Which is good. I mean, if something's illegal, immoral, or unethical, you need to shine a light on it.
That's right.
And he's able to do that with his platform. He started Project Veritas.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah, that's him. So he started Project Veritas.
That must have been where I heard that name, because that name sounded familiar.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he also, so Project Veritas didn't like the notoriety he was getting.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were a little worried about, some legal repercussions. Mm-hmm. And so they whipped up some charges about him, which are turning out to be false. And then now Project Veritas is just dying, fading away. So he started a new media group called the O'Keefe Media Group, OMG. Okay. So look him up if you're interested. Maybe Abby, the intern, can point you to that right direction. Mm-hmm. Interesting cat. I think I mentioned this the last time I did News and Note. Military, they're having to fork over money now for kicking people out of the Army for not getting their shot.
Oh, they're paying people that they kicked out.
Yeah,
that's good.
Again, that's illegal.
It's good. Yeah,
can't do that.
It's good,
especially because it was contrary to popular belief. Yeah. Those shots were experimental.
I don't know if I want to say this. I'm gonna say it. If we don't like it, we'll mark it and cut it out. That's fine.
Let's roll with it.
There was some talk that in the month of October and November that they were going to roll out more COVID restrictions. And they released this earlier that they were talking about this. So that didn't happen. So, which is, I was hoping was the case. So part of me thinks that was either somebody leaked information to get the pulse of what was going to happen.
Right.
Or the leaking of it. There's 3 options. What I just said, they leaked it and then people got fired up and they were like, oh, it's not going to work. Or it was not true and, it wasn't going to happen anyway.
Right.
But either way, you could already see, people had talked to me about being worried about it. I was not worried about it, to be honest with you, because it was hard enough the first time, like
Yeah.
for a big segment of people, but I mean, people were going to not be happy about it again.
Oh, even more so.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like it would this time around would have been crazy. So like that was good because ultimately I truly believe you should have most people have they make day-to-day terrible choices with their health.
Right.
So continue on to let them do whatever they want to do. If you want to make good choices with your health, bad choices with your health, it should ultimately be up to you.
Right.
So those things shouldn't be needed.
No.
If you want to do whatever. So I'm glad that those fizzled out and didn't happen for whatever reason. If it was truly that somebody leaked it and it totally backfired and they weren't able to do it because of the backlash, or it just never was going to happen, I'm glad that didn't come to fruition.
So I too remember that, and it spurred a lot of discussion on the folks that I follow with respect to current events.
Yeah.
And they it's like game on. Okay, I was thinking to myself, well, I fought this once.
Yeah.
And I resisted it.
Yeah.
And my opinion has not changed. It's even bolstered now. So I'm ready for another one. It would be ugly, and I would there are attributes of it that I would dislike, but I'm like, okay, let's go again.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, okay, you remember several weeks ago when I talked about the Stanley Milgram experiments, and then it was also tied to groupthink. Mm-hmm. There was a set of experiments, and this was Stanley Milgram's experiments on authority, but his mentor rather was a guy named Solomon Asch. Mm-hmm. And Solomon Asch did the conformity experiments. Mm-hmm. And the conformity experiments were, if you recall, they would hire like 7 actors, and they would bring in one subject. Mm-hmm. The subject was told, this is a test of, it didn't matter, like determining like the length of a line.
Oh yeah, I remember looking at it. Yeah.
And so the 7 actors would say an incorrect answer, and then the last guy, the true subject, like 95% of the time he would conform. It might have been 97% of the time he would conform.
For those of you listening, if you didn't listen to that episode, basically what Adam's saying is there was, let's call it 3 lines. One was 4 inches, one was 6 inches, and one is 8 inches. And you could, on paper, see how the difference in sizes. And they would be like, what is the biggest line? And the actors would...
Or they would, like, which one matches out of these 3 options?
And the actors would be like, pick like such a blatantly wrong answer that you're almost like, what? And then that guy who's not the actor, who's the actual participant, would be like, oh crap, well they all picked that one.
Yeah.
I don't want to look stupid, I don't want to look whatever. I'm going to pick the same thing as them.
I'm going to conform.
Yeah.
And that's we say that we're independent minded, and we say we don't want someone to tell us what we do, but both those experiments completely reject that notion.
Yeah.
But so let's just say 95% of the time that subject, the true subject participant, he would conform 95% of the time. 5% of the time, they would say, you guys are all wrong. I'm going to pick this answer.
Yeah.
Or he wouldn't say, you just say the answer is A when they were saying C.
Yeah.
But if one of the others or more, let's say if just one other participant out of those 7 actors said the true correct answer,
Yeah.
then like 35% of the time,
That person,
the subject would pick, the one that was obviously the right answer.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So just one person standing up and saying, no, I'm not going to do that, bolsters other folks to say, no, I'm not going to do that. Now, I've looked enough at this data, and this guy over here, he's been saying that all along, and he didn't make him do it before. So I'm going to say the answer is no.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take the shot.
Yeah.
And that's not a hit on anybody in particular. That's just human nature.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's human nature. So it's best if you look at it like that, because we don't want to like finger point, say, I can't believe you did that. That's human nature, just like the whole propaganda thing we're talking about with Ukraine.
Yeah.
We are all subject to it, so let's recognize it amongst ourselves and discuss that.
Yeah.
That could be a possibility before we start finger pointing, because now we can start talking about the issue at hand. Like, why is this group trying to fool us?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think the most important thing, like if all things were the same and like there wasn't some underhanded thing, whether what you believed about any course of medication, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you get to decide what you want to do, and it's also important to you that somebody else can decide what they want to do for themselves.
100%.
So like if they want to do it, that's great. as long as they can go do it, and that's anything. They can go do whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be medicine.
Choice of clothing,
it can be
shoes.
whatever.
Yeah.
But as long as you're free to make your choice, they're free to make their choice. Everybody's happy.
Right.
Yep.
That's right. That's what our country was based on,
Yep.
was individual freedoms.
Yep.
And not groups.
Right.
As soon as you start putting people in groups, then now we start wanting to do funny things. And that was the whole point of a republic.
Did you hear Elon Musk when he told, who the heck was it? Who was the guy that tried to blackmail him? Disney.
Oh, Bob Iger from
Bob
Disney.
Iger.
Well, it was Disney.
And he said some pretty aggressive language about, he's like, you try to blackmail me with money?
Yeah.
He was like,
good luck.
Yeah, good luck, buddy.
Yeah. That's what he said. Good luck.
Yeah. He said good luck, but a bunch more F letters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one more thing related to that, that military pay for discharging folks, Dr. Pierre Corey. Have you ever heard that name?
Yes.
So for the listener, he is a medical doctor, a physician. Might be a researcher also, but bottom line is he's a medical doctor that has a practice or had a practice associated with a health care system. And he was looking at the data from ivermectin, and he was like calling foul on it. Like when you look at the executive summary and the abstract of these papers, it said ivermectin's ineffective. And if you recall, ivermectin is not horse paste. It's actually a derived drug from natural things, from actually a mushroom discovered in Japan. But anyway, bottom line is it kills bad things, bad things harmful to your body. And you can't OD on it, literally cannot.
Yeah.
And so he was looking at the data, and the data did not support their conclusions that they were purporting in the abstract and the executive summary and in their early charts. So at any rate, he's been, he was ostracized. Cause, that's crazy. You need to get on a bandwagon because we're going to remove your license. And that's part of the problem with this hierarchy we have with any area, including medical doctors. But he wrote an op-ed. Hopefully it gains some more traction. And I don't have the reference of where that op-ed was published. I just saw a video of him talking about how he produced this op-ed based off of an FDA report. But the bottom line is more and more people are dying. Deaths, all-cause mortality is increasing.
Yeah.
And in the age group of 35 to 44, there's been a 26, and this is as of spring, so it takes a while to sort out the data and do the analysis. So age group 35 to 44, all-cause mortality or deaths jumped up 26% since pre-COVID. So 26% increase all-cause mortality in age group 35 to 44, and in 25 to 34, slightly younger age group, or the next bracket down, an increase of 19%. All-cause mortality. So the FDA and their people are saying, well, it's got to be smoking or diet. But how much could a diet change in 3 years and smoking change in that amount of time to cause that kind of rapid increase?
You're talking 4 years, basically.
Yeah. So let's just say 4 years.
Yeah.
So he states it's got to be the vaccine because it doesn't happen when COVID gets introduced.
Yeah.
And that's not what you see, even as inflated as the numbers were for people that were hospitalized with COVID. Those numbers were overinflated to get funding.
Yeah.
And so anyway, he says it's got to be the vaccine because that's where the numbers start to increase, and that's where the increases occur. Interesting, though. So I need to check that out.
I'm sure they'll look more into that. They being people in general.
People like, hopefully you all, the listener, are looking at that yourself.
Yeah.
And judge for yourself because nothing is so complicated that you can't read and do a little study on your own and determine for yourself what's best for you.
Yeah. It should also be, I won't get into that. Next.
All right. So I'm going to line through a couple things so I don't keep beating that up. Let's jump over to, you remember Russiagate?
With Trump?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the investigators, Christopher McGonagall, I think his name was.
Oh, the Harry Potter guy.
Or Charles McGonagall.
Oh. Some of you get that joke.
So I didn't.
Okay. Professor McGonagall is a Harry Potter professor.
Okay. So does he apply witchcraft?
And wizardry.
And wizardry.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I can't appreciate the distinction yet. So.
Yeah. Well, I think witchcraft is womanhood, and wizardry is manhood.
What's a warlock then?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You got me.
So
You Matt Walsh me.
yeah, that's funny. So he was an FBI official. He helped investigate Trump for his Russian collusion. The Russian collusion that I think, due to propaganda, that was just push. He's got to be, smoking. You see smoke, there's got to be fire, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Charles McGonigal was just sentenced to 4 years in prison for, guess what? Colluding with Russia.
Oh, well, that's a shame.
Yeah. Shocker. So this guy was investigating Trump, who ultimately accused him, not Charles McGonigal personally, but the government charged Trump of colluding with Russia.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out one of their investigators was colluding with Russia.
Yeah, I think they unequivocally proved that Trump was not in collusion with Russia. I think there's some pretty good data that says that didn't happen, and there were some people that were like, lying about it, which
That's
is a
true.
shocker.
But you ask, your average everyday citizen to just kind of passively pays attention to what's going on in the news. There's just an assumption that, well, he's got to be crooked.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a real estate developer in New York, and he was this and he was that.
He's probably crooked, but not with Russia.
Yeah.
At least you could say.
And
he
like
definitely.
all these charges, all the arrests, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And it turns out none of it's true. But the way the narrative goes is once it gets in there, it just churns and churns and churns.
Yeah. I think that's part of the reason what makes that makes Trump so wild when you debate him is he says some stuff, and just like you said, the casual listener, like he knows what he's doing. But like a lot of the times they find out the stuff that like he's good at dropping information on people like in a different way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it like puts it in people's ears. And like you're all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, is that really true?" And you may like look into it where like it's just an interesting way that he does it in terms of like especially when he's debating.
He does, and he also, especially when he was president, he would say things that would seem utterly bombastic and ridiculous, and like, oh, this is going to cause trouble. The audience that he was talking to on the face, that wasn't the true audience. Yeah. When you look at who was that ISIS leader that we sent some special operators in to capture or kill, and he was hiding in Syria. And they sent in a dog after him. And he blew himself up on a suicide vest. Al-Baghdadi.
Al-Baghdadi.
Yeah, Al-Baghdadi, who was literal evil.
Yeah.
I mean, the things he did to children, drowning, lighting them on fire, women, turn them into sex slaves, just disturbing, disgusting things. Drown people in cages, just beyond the pale.
Not a good person.
No, not a good person. And they found him because they will find you. I mean, with technology and that sort of thing, I'm sure he was taking as many measures as he could, but there's still there's a whole lot of identification you can do with.
We gonna get you.
Yeah, they're gonna get you. You can run, but you can't hide.
Yeah.
So they found him and went after him with a significant assault force and killed him. He was hiding behind a couple women. Naturally, that's what cowards do.
Yeah, that's always.
Always. And so what he did was Trump comes out and, he's the one that's going to announce it. And he says some bombastic things.
Yeah.
And he was cowering and like
crying.
A little girl. He was crying like a woman. He was just saying all these ridiculous things. He wasn't telling that to the American people. He was telling that to anybody that thinks they're brave enough to replace al-Baghdadi.
Yeah,
that's
right.
who his audience was.
Yeah.
And so when you start thinking about this guy, he's not a dummy.
Yeah.
He is not a dummy. And his communication, it just makes more sense. And the things that he does just seem ridiculous, but he's doing it for a purpose other than what seems the most obvious.
If you're a man and you don't know what Trump did to Putin when they shook hands, you're not a real man.
Yeah.
If you don't know what he did to him when they
you're talking about the pull-in?
The shake, yeah.
Yes.
If you don't know what he did to him, like he basically just said, "I'm your daddy."
Yeah.
That's what he said. Putin shook his hand. Trump grabbed him, pulled him in close, and that's
you're mine.
That's a show of if you as a man, if you're listening to this podcast, if anybody tries to do that to you, it's fighting time.
Yeah,
you can't let anybody do that to you. But that's like a subtle. Well, it's not. It's probably subtle to some people, but not subtle to your dad taught you things. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like maybe not be subtle to like, I'm trying to think what the term is. It's like common decency between men.
Right.
Like that's, you know what I mean?
There's some rules.
There's some rules. And
Yeah.
if somebody does that to you, they're saying something without saying something.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the same thing. He's just doing it with a handshake and body language.
Right.
Being like, you see what's happening right here, right?
Right.
Yeah. So.
Well, like when he pushed everybody out of the way at the NATO thing in Brussels. Just like shove everybody out of the way and he gets up front and straightens his tie and his jacket.
You need to listen. Do you ever listen to Shane Gillis? You probably don't.
I've seen some of his stuff. It's a little crude for me.
He doesn't. He does a skit. I'll send you just a skit where he does the impersonation of Trump doing that speech where he comes out.
I've seen that.
I mean, it's really funny.
Yeah.
It makes me laugh. He's like, I don't want to do it, but
Yeah.
I said, why are you crying? He also does a joke where he's like Trump's the only non-military guy in that room. And he's like, it's probably like a kid watching a video game. Like he's like, oh, whoa.
That's funny.
Yeah. All right. Sorry.
No, that's good. That's about it. The other stuff can wait. I think we'll tie it up there.
Let's on a positive note.
Yeah, go ahead.
I hope everybody comes to peace with everything.
100%. Yeah. And the way to do it is for people to kind of look at the lay of the land and not get wrapped up in what the media and the narrative are trying to tell you.
Do you know what I think we're missing, which I think used to happen? It's just free, like open conversation with people out getting all upset.
Yeah.
I think people, like younger people, equate disagreement in an argument to fighting or hating somebody.
Yeah.
But that's not the case.
Right.
Like I think it used to be that you could disagree with somebody and then be friends afterwards.
Right.
Like you could have, this is going to be shocking to some people, but you used to be able to sit across from dinner tables with your friends who were of opposing political parties and have like conversations and be friends and do all this stuff and have hard conversations. But I think part of the problem is we're skipping the hard conversations. We're just just yelling at each other.
Yeah.
And nonsense. And instead of trying you don't have to end a conversation with both of you seeing it the same way.
No.
You just end a conversation knowing that you both spoke your sides to it and you can be friends.
Agree to disagree, and
move on. But that's not the way it is right now.
Now, and hopefully we can grow past this whole. I know the following three things about given subject, and we're going to discuss those three things. Mm-hmm. And if you disagree with the rationale and how I got those three things, then we hate each other. But we just talk about those three things, and then we disagree, but that's okay because we're here to celebrate Christmas or New Year's or whatever.
Can I give you a very dumbed down example?
Sure.
It's very dumbed down, and you're going to hate that I bring this example up.
You
don't. You're pretty cool with it, but I so badly want aliens to exist. So badly. And I want to argue anybody on all the things that I've heard or data, but also like when somebody gives me an example of something that here's a reason why it may not be true, I'm in like, well, it's a good point.
Yeah.
But I still want it to be true. I still have my opinion on it, but I'm not mad at that person because they think a different way than me. It's just a differing opinions, and I listen to their side. Even though I really want this one thing to be true, and it may seem dumb, but I really like it. I like talking about it, and I want it to be true. But I understand that there's a chance that it couldn't be, and there's a chance that somebody sees it differently, and they could be right. But that's okay.
Yeah.
Even though I really want it to be true really badly.
So it's funny you bring that up because we disagree on that whole alien thing.
Yeah.
And although I do leave it open.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't know it.
No.
From seeing us interact with each other. Like, this isn't fake that we did when we did the alien episode.
Yeah.
It was just like, okay, well, this is what I think, and you shared what you think, and we talked about some things, and then we got up and we left. And every once in a while you'll talk about aliens, or, hey, did you see such and such on the Joe Rogan podcast? Yeah. So people need to be more like you and I, Dusty. I think that's what you're saying.
Good mustache, good beers, and smart brains.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, we're going to close it out. We're hoping for world peace. It is the end of the year, and hope you have a good New Year's Eve this next week, and that you'll come back and join us again. What's up?
If you have anything that you want us to do in the upcoming year on Mishmash Men, or you think a fun resolution for us for the podcast, you should post it on this video. Yeah. Or maybe intern
on Instagram.
Abby will post something for you guys to do. So we've been doing this for
almost a year.
This one, when did we start it? Right before Finley was born.
Yeah.
So is when we started it. So that was in March. So almost a year. We're almost at a year. So we always get sappy on Christmas and New Year's time because it's super fun. But we've enjoyed it.
Yeah.
We're going to keep rolling. If you guys want to see new stuff, let us know. But we hope y'all have enjoyed your Christmas.
Yeah.
And have a very happy New Year. Do something different this year. Better yourself somehow.
Yeah.
Do all the cool stuff.
Just enjoy those conversations with your loved ones.
Yep.
100%.
And argue. And if you're not right, fight each other. That's just the way it goes.
Fist fight.
Yeah,
just pull them in. Handshake.
Good handshake. Pull them in.
Yeah. Or squeeze their hand prematurely so you just get the fingers.
Yeah, really.
That'll teach
You
them.
can break their fingers. It's pretty good. Pretty cool move.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good move.
Well, hopefully we'll see you on the flip side in 2024, and we look forward to seeing you again. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.